Have you ever been in a situation when a seemingly small mistake ended up costing you greatly? It happened to me. I didn't even have any fucking clue that it will turn out to be like this. Trust is very important for any relationship. It takes a lot of effort to build this trust and very little to break it. I made the mistake of breaking it, and I regret that. Till this date. I, female 36, married to my husband, male 40. We have been married for 2 years. My husband is a professor in our local university. I'm an assistant professor in the same university. I joined this university 3 years back. The pay was really good, and the working hours were also less compared to my previous place of work. My husband is a senior professor in this university. He is well respected there. I met my husband in university when I was hired as an assistant professor to work under him. My husband was present during my interviews. I developed an instant crush on him. He was smart and fun. I was over the moon when I was hired to work under him as his assistant. We had to work in close proximity as our work demanded that. I used to attend his classes with him and also corrected test papers after work together. Working together worked in our favor. We used to hang out a lot with each other. One thing led to another and we started going on dates together. Our relationship started with small talks and casual jokes. We soon started having lunch together and spending more and more time with each other. The attraction was mutual, and it wasn't long before we got in a relationship with each other. After being together for a year, my husband asked me to marry him. I liked being with him. He was well respected in the college. He spoke with certain authority. All that had me really falling for him. I loved the way he cared for me. I told him yes, and we got married in a small wedding ceremony. Our married life was going well. I had moved in with him in his small bungalow. We were happy together. Our life was going great. We used to work together and then got to come home together. I was happy and content in my marriage. I felt like I had everything I ever wanted. My husband was the perfect alpha male. He was strong, confident, and charismatic. He knew what he wanted and how to get it. I admired him for his intelligence and hardworking nature. I felt like we were a perfect match, but soon I lost him. A year into our marriage, I made a small mistake that ended up costing me everything. It was a mistake that I didn't even think twice about when I made it, but the consequences that followed were unimaginable. I wish I could rectify that mistake. It all started with a new assistant professor who had joined our university. Let's call him George. George was around the same age as me. George was charming, confident, and, to be honest, very attractive. I had casually talked to him a few times before, but it was nothing out of the ordinary. However, one day, when my husband was out of town and I was working from a cafe near the university, me and George happened to bump into each other. We both ordered coffee and started chatting. The conversation was lighthearted and fun. We discussed everything from work to our personal lives. George was single and had just moved into the town. He was very easy to talk to, and before I knew it, a few hours had passed. We exchanged numbers and promised to keep in touch. I didn't think much of it at the time. I enjoyed talking to George, but I was happily married to my husband. Little did I know my small mistake of exchanging numbers with George would lead to a series of events that would turn my life upside down. Over the course of the next few weeks, George and I started texting each other. Initially, it was just casual conversations about work and our interests. But soon, our conversations became more flirtatious. I couldn't believe it at first. I was pretty sure that everyone was aware that I was married and who my husband was. George started sending me flirty texts messages which were subtle. I could have ignored it if I wanted to, but I didn't. I responded back to him in a flirty way too. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't seem to stop myself. I would text him only when my husband wasn't around, as I couldn't risk my husband finding this out. I was just having fun with texts. I didn't think I was doing anything very wrong. One day, my husband and I got into a really big fight. He wanted a baby, whereas I told him that I wasn't ready yet. We already had this discussion, and I had told him that I didn't want a baby. Having a baby came with a lot of responsibilities. I didn't think I was at that point of time where I was ready for those responsibilities. I tried to make my husband understand this, but he was too furious to listen. He said some really hurtful words to me. He told me that it was in my nature to run away from responsibilities. It made me very upset and sad. He left the house to get some space from me. I was home alone. The fight left me feeling upset and vulnerable. And that's when George messaged me, asking if I wanted to grab a drink with him. I hesitated, but the temptation was too strong, so I agreed to meet him. My husband needed his space away from me, so it was fine that I was taking my space too. I thought to myself as I texted George that I was down for meeting that night. We went to a bar far away from the university. It was on the outskirts of the town, so there were slim chances that I would run into someone who would recognize me there. The bar had an amazing atmosphere. The dim lights and soft music set the perfect mood for a night out. The drinks were flowing, and the conversation was light and fun. But then things started to get a little out of hand. I got very drunk that night. I ordered multiple shots of vodka. George was by my side throughout the night. We were flirting with each other continuously. It started to feel like we were the only two people in the world. I forgot about my fight with my husband. It was nice to be away from the stress of my marriage for a while. The chemistry between me and George was undeniable, and it was unlike anything I had ever felt before. That night, I cheated on my husband. George came out to drop me to my cab. We stood there and waited for my cab to come. We were waiting on the pavement when he kissed me. He gave me enough time and space to back out, but I didn't. I kissed him back. I was so drunk that I didn't realize anything till the next morning. I woke up with a terrible hangover the next morning. It took me some time to realize what had happened last night. My kiss with George came back to memory, and I instantly thought, fuck, what had I done? I went out of the bedroom and found my husband at the kitchen counter. He was quite calmer than yesterday. He asked me where I was last night. I told him that I went out with my friends. He nodded to that and then said sorry for our fight that happened the previous day. He told me that he'll give me as much time as I want and there's no hurry to have a baby. He just couldn't wait to grow our family. I was instantly consumed by the guilt of what I had done last night. I kissed another man when my husband was dreaming of growing our family together. It was just a kiss, but still. It was a mistake that I deeply regretted, but there was no going back now. I knew I had made a grave error in judgment, and the regret consumed me. I wanted to come clean and tell my husband, but I was too scared of his reaction. I was terrified that he might find out about my mistake and leave me. I knew him. He wasn't the type of man who would let something like this slide. I saw text messages from George when I went to my bedroom. There were texts from him the previous night asking me if I had reached home safe. There were also texts about how he really enjoyed our kiss and would like to see me again. I immediately blocked him. The guilt of not being honest with my husband weighed heavily on me every day. I loved my husband, and I knew that if he found out the truth, it would break his heart. But still, I couldn't bring myself to tell him what had happened between George and me. Every night I lay awake in bed, motionless, reliving the moment I made my mistake. The guilt and fear were heavy like a physical weight, crushing my chest. It had been weeks since that day, but I still didn't have the courage to tell my husband what I had done. My throat seemed to close up every time I tried to form the words. So I decided to keep it a secret. I tried to act normal in front of my husband for the next few weeks. But every time he touched me, every time he kissed me, I felt like a fraud. I felt like I was deceiving him. I was living a lie. I was stuck in this limbo of guilt and fear until one day, George came to the seminar conducted by my department. My husband was the speaker in this event. As soon as I saw George, my heart sank. He knew what we had done, and he could easily reveal the truth if he wanted to. Fortunately for me, he didn't say anything about that night or even acknowledge me in any way. He kept his distance throughout his time on campus, never once giving me an indication that he remembered our secret kiss from months ago. I was relieved that he hadn't said anything about us, but at the same time, my guilt only intensified even further. It felt like a ticking time bomb waiting to go off at any moment. The day finally came when everything fell apart. It was a Monday morning and I was running late for work. I had a meeting with one of my colleagues and I was already 10 minutes late. I quickly grabbed my bag and rushed out of the house. I got in my car and started driving towards the university. As I was driving, I realized that I had left my phone at home. I panicked for a moment, but I decided to keep going. I knew that I would be late for my meeting, but I didn't want to turn back and risk being even later. My husband didn't have anything scheduled for the morning. He was going to come separately before his afternoon meeting. When I finally arrived at the university, I rushed to my meeting. It was a productive meeting, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was wrong. As soon as the meeting was over, I rushed to my office. When I opened the door, I saw my husband sitting at my desk. He had my phone in his hand, and he was scrolling through my messages. I froze. I knew at that moment that everything was about to come crashing down. My small mistake had finally caught up with me. My husband looked up at me with a look of betrayal in his eyes. I felt like the biggest fool in the world. He stood up and handed me my phone. "Why did you do it?" he asked me, his voice barely above a whisper. He had scrolled through my text messages with George. He read all our text messages where he flirted with me and I flirted back. He also mentioned the kiss in the texts. I had no words to say. I knew that there was no justification for what I had done. All I could do was hang my head in shame and wait for whatever was to come. My husband told me how he knew something was wrong when I started avoiding him in the last weeks. He told me that he had thought I was still upset about the baby thing, and that's why he was giving me space. "I never thought you'd betray me like this," he said to me. My husband didn't say anything else. He simply left my office, leaving me alone with my guilt and shame. I knew that I had lost his trust, and I didn't know if I would ever be able to earn it back. I sat at my desk for what felt like hours, numb with shock and regret. I had destroyed the one thing that mattered most to me, my marriage, and all because of a stupid kiss. I went home after some time. I needed to explain to my husband that it was a mistake and that I really loved him. My husband was sitting on the couch in the living room drinking his whiskey. I went to him to hold him and explain to him what had happened, but he rejected my touch and pushed me away. His eyes were cold and distant, and I could feel the anger radiating off of him. I knew that I had hurt him deeply, and there was nothing I could do to make it right. I felt an urgent need to explain everything to him. I told him how it was just a kiss, and that happened only because I was extremely drunk. He looked at me with so much anger but didn't say anything to me. He left the house after my confession. For the next few days, my husband barely spoke to me. It was like I didn't exist. I begged him for his forgiveness, but he refused to even look at me. I felt like a ghost wandering without any purpose through our home. Days turned into weeks with my husband and I living together but barely speaking. The air between us was thick with tension and unsaid words that hung like a loaded gun. I tried to reach out to him, but he kept pushing me away, refusing to even look at me. Everything I tried went in vain. I tried to hug him while he was sleeping, but he rejected my touch. For a while, I thought that we could work things out if I just kept putting efforts to earn his forgiveness. I thought that we could talk about what had happened and find a way to move forward, but it seemed like my husband had already made up his mind about what he wanted to do. One day, he came to me and told me that he wanted to talk about something. Hope blossomed as I sat there to listen to his words. I thought that maybe he has finally forgiven me and wants to make things all right again. He immediately crushed all the hope when he asked me to leave the house. He told me that he needed some space to think about things. He said it was hard for him to think with a clear mind when I'm in the same house as him. I was devastated. I couldn't believe that it had come to this. I didn't fight his decision. A small part of me hoped that maybe if we stayed away for a while, he would miss me and everything would get back to normal. I rented a small apartment in town and moved out of our home. It was really hard for me to leave the house. I didn't pack all of my stuff as I had hoped that I was going to come back and live here with him again. I moved to the apartment. It was a lonely existence there without my husband. I spent most of my days in tears, regretting everything that had happened. Or I would try to escape everything by getting lost in my work. I had requested work from home because I was too depressed to face the world. Work was a good distraction until I lost it too. One day, I got a call from the head of my department telling me that I was immediately terminated from my job. I was stunned. It felt like everything was falling apart in my life, my marriage, my home, and now my career. I had poured my heart and soul into my work, only to have it taken away from me because of a foolish mistake. I knew that it was my husband's doing. He had always been controlling, but I never thought he would go this far. I begged and pleaded with the head of my department to reconsider, but it was no use. The head of the department explained that my husband had called and demanded that they fire me from my job. He had told them that if they didn't remove me, he would resign, and the university couldn't have that. He had used his power and influence in the university to fire me. With no job and no home, I felt lost and helpless. I didn't know what to do or where to turn. The guilt and shame of my mistake were still heavy on my heart, and now I had to deal with the consequences of my husband's revenge too. Days turned into weeks, and I struggled to make ends meet. I didn't have much savings with me either. I applied for jobs everywhere, but no one would hire me. I felt like a failure in every aspect of my life. But then something unexpected happened. George reached out to me. He had mailed me since I had blocked his contact on my phone. It wasn't hard to get my mail since George was also a professor in the university where I used to work. He told me that he had heard about what had happened, and he wanted to help me. At first, I was hesitant. After all, he was the reason why I was in this mess in the first place. I was already jobless and had a husband who hated me. I didn't know what worse could happen to me, so I thought might as well meet George and see what happens. I met George at a small cafe near my apartment. He was dressed in a smart suit and had a charming smile on his face. He offered to buy me a coffee and we sat down at a small table by the window. He listened patiently as I poured out my heart to him. I told him everything that had happened, about my husband, my job, and my life falling apart. I felt a sense of relief as I spoke, like a weight was being lifted off my chest. This was the first time I was sharing this with someone. George sat quietly for a moment after I had finished. Then he leaned forward and took my hand. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I had no idea that things had gotten this bad for you." He looked into my eyes, and for a moment, I felt like I was drowning in them. There was a warmth and kindness in his gaze that I hadn't seen in a long time. It was almost comforting. "I want to help you," he said. His gesture was comforting. My husband hated me at the moment, but this man wanted to help me out. I told him that even though I appreciated his gesture, I couldn't accept it. I didn't want to make my husband more angry. Taking help from George would have done more harm than good. But as the days passed and my situation became even more desperate, I found myself thinking about George's offer more and more. I had no other options left, and he seemed genuine in his desire to help me. He had told me that he had connections in the academic world and that he could help me find a new job. My husband wasn't picking my calls. I had called him so many times to talk to him about my termination, but there was no response by his side. He was completely avoiding my existence, so I called George and told him that I had changed my mind. George helped me in finding a new job in another university. I had a hope that my life was finally getting back on track. Getting a job was the first step in making everything all right. He also helped me with my CV and cover letter. I told him that I was really grateful for his help. We weren't even friends for long, but still this guy was doing so much for me. I think that George was just trying to help me out because he also felt guilty for what had happened with me. We didn't flirt again or did anything inappropriate with each other. He was genuine in his approach to help me out in finding a job. I kept thinking about my husband and how I would have done anything to earn his forgiveness. I went to the university to talk to him, but he didn't even look at my direction and told me to leave. I was getting desperate to make him forgive me. Weeks went by and I settled into my new job. The work was challenging but rewarding, and I was slowly building a new life for myself. I tried calling my husband multiple times, but he never answered my calls or replied to my messages. I was still living alone in my small apartment with no one but George to confide in. Just as I had settled in my work, I was fired from that job as well. I had suspicion that this was my husband's doing as well. All the progress had gone to the bin, and I was back to square one. I couldn't control it anymore. I went to my husband's home and confronted him. I asked him what he wanted. He couldn't just keep taking away my work. He got livid and said that I should have thought about it before cheating on me. My husband had found out from his friends that I had gotten my new job because of George. He thought that I was having an affair with George. He told me that he hated me and that he wished he had never met me. He was in so much anger that I got scared. I tried to explain that there was nothing going on between me and George, and he was just helping me out to find a job. I swore to him but he didn't believe me. I got desperate and tried to justify the events of that night once again. I told him that I was really drunk and had way too many vodka shots. He laughed at me and told me that he cannot believe I was justifying my cheating to him. That night, I felt like I had lost my husband. The distance and coldness in his voice made it clear that he didn't want to do anything to me anymore. I had tears in my eyes when I was leaving that house. This time it seemed that I was never going to come back to this house. I kept applying for jobs at other places only to get rejected everywhere. I stopped talking to George as well. Seeing him brought back the guilt of that night when I kissed him, and it reminded me of everything that happened after that. One day when I was getting back to my apartment after another job interview, I saw an envelope waiting for me. My husband had sent me divorce papers. I couldn't stop the tears when I saw the papers. My marriage was ending because of me. It was only then that I realized that a single kiss had brought my entire world crashing down. I had never thought that a single mistake of mine could cost me my marriage and everything else. But here I was, alone, with no one to turn to for help. I didn't have many friends in town, and the ones that I had made were mutual friends with me and my husband. They were no way going to be with me and lose their friendship with him. I didn't even have my family, as they all had moved to another state because of my dad's transfer. The next few days seemed like an extremely long and painful nightmare. I went through every emotion possible, from sadness to anger, guilt to despair. I eventually stopped feeling anything at all and just knew that the only way forward was to slowly start rebuilding my life by myself. I took a deep breath and wiped away my tears. It was time to face reality and move on. I decided to sign the divorce papers. I couldn't fight for my marriage when my husband didn't want to. He had given up on me. I didn't even blame him. After all, it was me who had cheated on him. I signed the papers and went to my husband's house to give it to him. I also had to pack the rest of my stuff kept in his house. He opened the door and let me in. I gave him the papers and told him that I needed to get my stuff as well. He just nodded and made way for me to get to the bedroom. As I was going through my things, I came across a small note that my husband had left for me on our first anniversary. It read, "I love you more than anything in this world. You are my life, my soulmate, and my partner in crime. Happy anniversary, my love." The note made me cry even more. What had gone so wrong? How did we end up here? Where did all the love go? I packed as many things as I could manage and then left his house. I thought that maybe he would look at me with longing, just for a second, but nothing like that happened. There was only coldness in his eyes. After I came back to my apartment, I decided to take a break from everything and went for a walk. I walked aimlessly, lost in my thoughts. I didn't realize that I was about to get hit by a car speeding my way. A stranger had pulled me back from the road. That incident finally shook something inside me. I decided that I wasn't going to continue being a damsel in distress and was finally going to take control of my life. I left a message to my husband telling him that if he was sure about his decision, then I needed the divorce to be granted as soon as possible. He didn't reply back to me, but his lawyers contacted me and told me that the divorce proceedings won't take much time since it was an amicable divorce. They informed me of the terms mentioned in the divorce. My husband was giving me a fair share of his life earnings. I know I didn't deserve it, and neither did he want to share that with me. He was required by the law to do so. I told them to tell my husband that I didn't need his money or his assets. I needed the money even more after I lost my job, but I thought maybe this will make him forgive me. It didn't. The lawyers contacted me back, telling me that my husband had said this won't have any impact on his decision. Our divorce proceedings started soon and went as smoothly as possible. During the time we were required to be at the court, my husband didn't even look at my direction and only talked to his lawyers. His cold behavior used to hurt me so much. Our divorce was granted within 3 months by the court. I remember that I kept hope till the last moment. When the judge asked my husband if he was sure he wanted to move ahead with it, I waited for him to say no. But nothing like that happened. My husband has been relieved to lose all connections with me after the divorce, where on the other hand, I miss him every day. I wish that I could go back in time and rectify my mistake, but that is just wishful thinking. I have to spend my entire living with the guilt of destroying my relationship with my husband. After my divorce, I went out for lunch with a friend. She had called me and asked to meet since it has been very long. I wasn't very interested, but I still agreed. The friend was a mutual friend of mine and my husband. She told me that my husband has started dating again. As soon as the words slipped from her, she realized what she had told me and then completely changed the topic. I couldn't believe her words. I accepted that I had made a very big mistake, but I really loved my husband and didn't even think about moving on. And he moved on so easily. I asked more about him, but she didn't tell me anything after that. I have no one to blame for my situation but myself. If I hadn't made that foolish mistake, I would still be at home with my husband. I cannot change what has already happened, and now I'm just trying to adapt to the changes now. I knew I couldn't keep running into my husband or see him with another woman. I thought the best way to escape this pain is to get away from this town. Noon was going to give me a job here anyway, especially now when everyone knew about my divorce. I found a job in another town nearby. It was very less salary than what I used to get working with my husband, but I had no other option, so I accepted it and moved to that town. My presence didn't matter to anyone in this town either way. I'm just trying to get by each day at the moment. Some days it feels too difficult. I'm thinking of saving some money and joining therapy sessions. Maybe that would help with the guilt I carry inside me. Please let me know what you guys think. Thank you for reading my story so far. It felt good to share this with all you people here on Reddit. Update. For everyone asking me how I am doing now, thank you for asking. If I'm being honest, I don't know if I'm okay or not. It's still hard to process everything that has happened, but I just try to not think about it too much. Every time I think about the last few months, I have a breakdown. I'm just hoping it gets better with time. And for the comments which asked if either me or my husband tried to contact each other after the divorce, I did try to reach him, but he has blocked my number and on other social media platforms. I have mailed him telling him that I'm sorry, and I hoped that he would talk to me again. But like I expected, there has been no reply from him. Update. It has been more than a year since my last update. Everything has changed quite a lot since then. I thought that I was finally moving on with life. My breakdowns had decreased. I was going to therapy sessions as well. I haven't been fired from my job, which was as good as it could get. In the last year, I had tried to contact my ex-husband on multiple occasions. He hadn't talked to me even once. I wished him on his birthday via mail. The day of our anniversary was really hard for me. I couldn't help but reach him out. He never responded to any of my mails. I was still blocked on his phone. I knew he was dating someone, as my friend told me. I thought he was able to forgive me by now, and will at least talk to me. It would have been enough for me if just talked to me, but nothing. I had finally left all hopes and was trying to move on with my life as well. Just as I was trying to move forward, I was brought 4 steps backward. Last month, I had to go to the town where my husband lives for some document verification purposes. I needed his signature on some documents. I tried to reach him through email about this, but he didn't reply. I thought of going there by myself. Maybe a small part of me was just looking for some excuse to see him again. I was really anxious about meeting him after such a long time. I went to his house and rang the doorbell. I didn't know what to expect, but I surely didn't expect what I saw. A woman opened the door. She was quite young. She was also prettier than me. I knew that he was dating someone shortly after divorce, so I should have gone prepared. However, I wasn't prepared to see that woman pregnant. Her belly was showing clearly. She must have been around 5 months pregnant. It hurted me a lot to see another woman in his house pregnant with his child. I immediately got the thoughts as to how it should have been me having his child. We had a fight about having a baby when I went out that night with George. Guilt hit me hard as I stood there. I started getting thoughts as to how we wouldn't have gone this apart if we had a child to connect us with each other. I tried to compose myself. I told myself that I couldn't cry in my ex's house in front of the woman pregnant with his child. I told that woman who I was and that I needed his signature. She recognized me and told me that he's out and that to leave the paper with her. She'll courier them to me. She was kicking me out from the house, which used to be mine earlier. I nodded and gave her my address. I left that house with tears in my eyes and then came back to my apartment. I started having breakdowns again after that day. I started getting dreams about him with that woman and their child. I scheduled a session with my therapist, but even that didn't help. I have realized that I cannot escape this guilt and regret. It will always accompany me. I'm sharing this here because it feels to share my story without having someone judging me. If any of you know something to do which will make this easier, please share with me. I'm willing to try anything at this point. Dear Redditors, there's nothing more painful than watching the home you fought hard to build being broken by your own partner. Sure, I am not a saint, but I did not expect my wife to throw away our 30 long years of relationship just because she wanted to feel young again. It's always easier to destroy things, but it's never easy to build them up. I still don't understand how 3 decades worth of dedication was broken in just a few weeks. My name is Paul, and I'm a 50-years-old man who is married to Florence, a 49-years-old woman. Florence and I met when we were in college, and we just hit it off immediately. We dated for 5 years and have been married for 25 years. We literally just celebrated our 25 years anniversary last weekend. I know you all are wondering why I'm writing this message when we just had a huge 25 years anniversary celebration. Well, my wife has decided to make decisions that are only breaking our marriage. She's cheating on me and I know it. I know it because I have caught her in the act many times. I just don't know why this is happening to me or why she is doing it. It does not make sense. She does not know that I know yet, and that is only because I am taking my time to process what she did. I'll be needing advice from Reddit as I try to get to the bottom of this. I could just let her know now and end our marriage, but it's not that easy. 30 years of being with one person is not something you can just throw away. The man she is cheating on me with is young. Yes, he's very young. He should be at least 20 years younger than her. I'm certain if I had knocked her up when we were in college, she would have been able to give birth to his age mate. I'm disgusted by just thinking about it. The fact that our anniversary was just a few days ago makes me wonder if this whole thing has been going on long before our anniversary. My wife now sings in the shower and wears makeup. Listen, I'm not against makeup, and I've never been against it. She can wear it if she wants, but I don't understand why she's suddenly wearing it after stopping for years. I mean, at first I thought she was just trying to experiment her youth all over again, but then I realized that she was wearing makeup to go see her new lover. I caught her sneaking out of the house many times in the night. I'd wake up and she'd be nowhere to be found in the house. I'm frustrated because I want to say something, but I just can't right now. I need to be patient to know my next steps. So far, I know she's cheating with a younger man and I know his name. I also know that she sneaked out of the house at night and came back at dawn. This is vital information I'd need when I finally want to catch her in the act. I'm not going to let her ruin our marriage without facing the consequences. I'm going to keep you guys updated every single chance I get. Please let me know the next steps I should take. Update. I'm super grateful to everyone that has taken their time to let me know what I should do. I've seen some very vital advice that I do not take for granted at all. Now let me let you all know what has been going on during these past few days. My wife has not stopped seeing her lover, and things have intensified between them. She doesn't even try to hide the relationship. It's almost like she wants me to know she's cheating or she likes the adrenaline she's getting from it. Yesterday we were having dinner, and then she asked me what I thought about oral sex. I was shocked and confused at the same time. I did not expect her to ask me such a question. My wife and I have never engaged in oral sex before, so I did not expect her to tell me one of her favorite sex activities is oral sex. I saw how she smiled and continued eating after she asked the question. She definitely wanted to get a reaction out of me, so I ignored her and continued eating my dinner. In the evening yesterday, she was in the shower moaning out loud. When I say she was moaning, I mean it. It was not a painful moan, it was sexual. I heard it loud and clear, and it was not just once. It kept recurring again and again. I even had to leave the room because I got annoyed. Some of you might ask why I did not go to the shower and see why my wife was moaning. That's because I already knew why she was moaning. I heard her talking to someone and I was sure it was a phone call because her phone was not in the bedroom. My wife was definitely calling her lover yesterday. The way she's disrespecting our marriage is very disgusting. She's not hiding any of it, and that's how I know that my wife must have been cheating on me for a very long time. Just like you all advised in the comments section, I'm going to try my best to catch her in the act by following her one of these days. If that does not work, I'll definitely confront her and see what kind of excuse she comes up with. I heard her over the phone planning a date with him. I think she's going to be sneaking out of the house tonight. I'm definitely going to see what she's up to. Before I forget, some of you asked if we have children. Yes, we do. We have 2 children, a boy and a girl. They are both in college now. That's all for today, guys. Expect another update soon. Update. My dear Redditors, I did as I promised and followed my wife out 2 nights ago. I think I made a very big mistake by following her because what I saw was very devastating. That night, I had to pretend I was asleep before she left the house. She got dressed in a very revealing outfit, then she wore a coat over it and left the house. I got dressed after she left too and decided to go on foot. I don't have an exotic car. I have a truck. It's old and rusty, and I'm 100% confident that if I'd taken that truck, I would have woken the whole neighborhood. It was hard to keep up with my wife on foot, and at some point, I lost her. I did not see her on the road again, so I got confused on where to go. It took time, but I was able to find out where she was. She called a taxi and left, so I had to call a taxi too. My taxi followed hers for almost 10 minutes, and it was exhausting. She finally stopped at what seemed like a secluded neighborhood. I was worried for a minute because the neighborhood looked suspicious. I did not imagine that my wife chose a gangster as her boyfriend. I'd never seen him up close, but from the neighborhood we stopped at that night, I knew he had to be some young guy in a gang or something. My wife was not worried for her safety at all. She strolled into the neighborhood like she had lived there all her life. At that moment, I believed that my wife must have been under a spell. Yes, I know how delusional that sounds, but what do you expect me to say? I did not like the neighborhood or the sight of my wife greeting the neighbors like they were longtime friends. I felt disrespected and jealous. I'm still jealous even as I write this. Florence got into a particular house that was almost secluded from the rest. I had to hide behind a tree for a long time, waiting for her to come out. I hoped she would come out fast because, dear Redditors, I was in a very suspicious neighborhood. At that moment, I knew that if I was seen spying on my wife in a neighborhood she was very familiar with, I could have been beaten up. I did not trust my wife not to have me killed. She was already cheating on me, so I did not trust her at all. After almost an hour of waiting, she left the house with the man I'd seen her with before. They were smiling happily and his hands were wrapped around her shoulders. I will be very honest, he is a good-looking man. He has strong muscles and very good teeth. He was also very touchy with her. He was touching almost all parts of her body at once as he whispered something into her ear. I watched as my wife blushed and practically snuggled her head on his shoulders. I was disgusted by how shameless my wife was. She did not even care to check if anyone was watching them. They acted like they were the only ones in the world. I felt like taking up a stone and throwing it at them. Rude. I know, but no one wants to see the woman they are married to blushing and snuggling up to a younger man like she was still in high school. I even began to suspect that my wife was stealing from me. Yes, I had every reason to suspect that. There could be a higher possibility that she was giving money to her new lover. The guy looked like a stripper who lost his way in life. Don't judge my ability to judge him. If you found your wife cheating on you, you definitely understand what I feel right now. I get what might have tempted her. He's young and all, but he looked like a bad idea. He had good looks, but I swear he looked like a criminal. Yes, Reddit, you read that right. I'm judging him. I'm fucking judging him. They were just touching, but it almost felt like I was watching porn. My wife grabbed his neck and kissed him. She kissed him slowly and passionately. I feel disgusted even writing this, and I have wished to unsee everything I saw that night. I waited for them to finish that night, so I could finally go because I had seen enough, but it did not end there. The young-looking criminal guy gripped my wife's ass like the fool he was. My stupid wife did not try to stop him. She leaned into his touch and smiled from ear to ear. I was fucking pissed. The fact that my wife and I had sex the night before and she was doing that with no conscience at all made me very disgusted. The stupid guy grabbed her hands, then whispered something in her ear again. My wife nodded her head, and then they went back inside. I don't think I need to read my faith to know what they sent back inside to do. I was already full, so I turned around and headed back for the road. I almost got caught by 2 guys who were sitting around smoking. They stopped me and asked who I was and what I was doing there. I had to lie that I was a delivery man who came to deliver pizza. I practically ran from there that night. When I got home, I could barely contain the anger I felt. All because of my wife, I had to lie to claim I was a delivery man. Not once in my life did I imagine myself sneaking after my wife at night. My dear Redditors, do you see how fucked up this whole thing is? I don't even know what to do. Imagine the amount of anger and annoyance I feel right now. That night, I almost broke our wedding picture and threw it out. I wanted to pack my wife's belongings outside the house at that very moment. I practically watched her sexually interact with another man. I was there, and I watched it live and direct. I don't need any facts or investigation. I don't need any evidence. I saw it with my own eyes. There's nothing my wife could say that would validate any of what she did. It was not her being drunk, and it was not a one-time thing. For her to know the neighbors in that neighborhood, it had to have been going on for a very long time. She has been cheating on me way before our anniversary. I don't need to have any evidence at all. That night, I made sure I thought of a plan before my wife came back home. I wanted to find out more about her cheating and why she was doing it. The betrayal I felt was very bad. I was practically heartbroken because of what I saw. My wife and I have been married for too long. She should have thought about that before doing what she did. When my wife came home in the morning, I was tempted to ask her where she had been. I was so close to confronting her, but I had to control myself. I did not want to confront her, then have her lead in my face or try to defend her actions. I have seen many movies of how cheaters turn everything around. This was not a movie, but I did not want to underestimate my wife at all. I knew that our children were going to be coming back home from their college break, so I had to hatch up a plan first. I planned to expose her in front of our children and see just how embarrassed she would be. Yes, I do not have a conscience in this regard. I plan to be as ruthless as she is, but first, I want to ask my dear Redditors what you all think. Do you all think it's better for me to confront Florence and let her know I know she's cheating, or it's better I just expose her in front of our kids? These are the two options I've been stuck with for the past few days. To be honest, living with my wife under my roof and sharing the same space with her has been very hard. I don't even care about her touch or laugh at her stupid jokes. I'm disgusted by every single thing she's been doing. I think this is why it's better to confront her and let her know that I know the truth. That way, she can stop pretending and acting like everything is all right when it's not. She's acting like a teenage girl who's love-struck. A woman who has 2 children and has been married for over 25 years should know better. If I expose her in front of my kids, I will not feel a single bit of guilt. I'll act nonchalantly the same way she acted nonchalantly when her criminal-looking lover groped her ass in front of people. If anyone knew me in that neighborhood, they'd think I'm the biggest fool to exist on this planet. What irks me more is the fact that she had the audacity to pretend like she loves me and is not cheating on me. If I did not know about her cheating, I'd have foolishly thought my wife was falling in love with me all over again, lol. So, my dear Redditors, please let me know what you think I should do. All your comments are very much appreciated, and I'd love nothing more than to reply to all of them if I have the chance. This is very important to me, guys. Please help me. Update. My dear Redditors, I see that this post has gotten a lot of recognition. Thank you all for your wonderful ideas and suggestions. I'm really thankful to you all. This experience has been traumatizing, but the funny comments of all the Redditors had me laughing out loud. I did not expect some of the names Florence is being called in the comments. Even her criminal boyfriend was not spared at all. I like that very much, lol. Well, it's time for me to give you guys an update. Most of you suggested that it's better I confronted my wife first before letting my children know. I thought about it a lot, and after some time, I believed that was the best option too. Some of you also said it's better I follow my wife to her lover's house and catch them red-handed before confronting her, so I'd have a lot of evidence to back up my claims. I mean, what better evidence than being caught in the act? I really liked the idea, so I decided to go with it. It took me time to know what my wife was up to because she started hiding to make her calls. I believe that she got suspicious and decided to hide when calling her lover. I did not let that stop me, though. It took time, but I was finally able to eavesdrop on her conversation with him. I found out they were planning to meet up at his friend's apartment. I was happy to hear that because I did not want to go back to that neighborhood again. The chances of them catching me the second time was very high. On the day of their planned date, my wife did something that surprised me. I was practically spooked at how confident she was when she stood in front of me and lied to my face. She told me she was going to get some gifts for our children that were going to be back in 2 weeks. I asked her if she was sure, and she said yes. She even asked me if I wanted to go with her to get the gifts. That was intentional on her part because she was very aware of the fact that I had to be at work that day. She knew I could not say yes, so that was why she asked. I pretended to be sad I could not follow her, then bade her goodbye. I did not go to work that day and already told one of my colleagues to cover for me. I did not follow my wife immediately because I checked her phone the previous day and knew exactly where she was going to meet up with her lover. I spent another hour hailing a taxi and going to the address I'd seen on her phone. When I got to the apartment, I was very angry. I didn't even know why I suddenly got angry all over again. The fact that my wife had the nerve to lie to me that morning was very disgusting. My dear Redditors, you needed to have seen how my veins were practically protruding on my neck. Who would have thought that a 50-year-old man like me would have to go around looking for his 49-year-old wife because he found out she's cheating on him with a man much younger than him? I felt embarrassed on my behalf as I made my way to the door of the apartment. I still remember the looks people were giving me because I spent a lot of time at the door, contemplating whether I was making the right decision or not. I stopped second-guessing myself when I heard the sounds that were coming out of the apartment. I could hear the disgusting moans and stifled screams, and it was just too much for me to stomach. I did not think twice before banging on the door. The moans stopped immediately, and then I could hear the tussle inside. At that point, they were struggling to get dressed. The criminal-looking guy even cussed and hissed. The fool had the audacity to tell Florence that whoever was at the door had to have come for important business, or else he would punch them in the face. The guy had the audacity to say that to a woman he was not even married to. Immediately, the door was unlocked. I had to hold in the punch that I wanted to land in the guy's face. He was in his boxer briefs and his hair was ruffled. Even a 14-year-old child could guess what they had going on before I came there. My dear Redditors, you cannot even imagine that the guy had the audacity to ask me what the fuck I wanted. I did not speak at first because I had to stare at his face and whole body just to imagine what had gotten into my wife. I had to ask myself what went wrong that she decided to shake our home because of the young guy who looked like he did not have his life figured out. I took a deep breath and asked the guy where my wife was. You all cannot imagine how nonchalant he looked even after I called Florence my wife. He leaned on the door and raised his brows. He even went as far as stroking his chin and eyeing me up and down. I was surprised when he said, "So you are the old man that does not know how to handle a woman." I was enraged. How could a boy I was practically capable of giving birth to ask me such a question? I had to control myself that day because I knew that it was not his fault. If he had the audacity to say that to me, then it was my wife who gave him the liberty to do so. She must have been saying degrading things about me to him. My dear Redditors, can you imagine that? When I found out my wife was cheating many weeks ago, I was heartbroken, but I never imagined that she'd go as far as saying awful things about me to her lover. Who does that? The funny part is that she told him I could not handle her. I feel disgusted. Maybe my wife is really a child in an adult body. I'm sorry for deviating, guys. I just had to use this medium to vent out the anger I felt after that stupid boy said those words to me without any hint of fear. After he said those words to me, I pushed him back into the apartment. He almost lost his footing because he was surprised and ended up on the couch. I searched around for my wife and found her struggling to put her bra on. You needed to see how messy her hair looked. She looked like a fucking whore. Yes, I said it. I called my wife a whore, and I'm not afraid to say it again. When I saw how dirty she looked, I could not help but lose the little respect I had for her. When our eyes met, I could see the embarrassment in them, but not once did I see a single trace of guilt in her eyes. She finally got her bra on, then raised her head up high like she had won a Nobel Prize. I shook my head in disgust and asked her, "Is this the gift you want to give our children when they get back?" My dear Redditors, my shameless wife shook her head and told me she could explain. I had to laugh immediately because I found it very funny. Every single person caught cheating seems to feel the need to explain. Explain what? Explain how you decided to open your legs for a man you're 20 years older than just because you wanted to cheat on your own husband? I called her a whore right there and then. Her little plaything had the audacity to tell me, "Don't you dare call her a plaything." I felt like snapping his tattooed head in half, but I didn't. Not because I didn't want to, but because I knew I would not win a fight with him. He is young and agile. I might not be old, but my bones are definitely not the same. I also didn't want Florence to get the idea that I was fighting for her. I would have been very stupid if I gave her that satisfaction of watching her plaything and her husband wrestling it out. She was a fucking fool, and I had to let her know she was not worth my time or strength. I left the apartment immediately because I'd seen exactly what I wanted to see. Thankfully, I did not feel that heartbroken that day. Maybe it was because I'd seen her with him many times before, or maybe it was because I already knew she had been cheating on me. My wife only came back home 2 hours later. Do you know what that means? She was not afraid to stay back and finish what they had started. That just shows how she has no fucking respect for our marriage. I was devastated to see her walk into the bedroom confidently. I stood up from the bed and asked her to get the fuck out of my house. She told me I was acting irrationally and that I needed to give her time to explain. I was not interested in listening to her explanation, and I made that clear to her, but she was relentless. She told me that even if I had not caught her cheating, she planned to let me know by herself. She said she was sorry for cheating on me, but she does not regret it. Yes, Redditors, she said that. The woman I've been married to for 25 fucking years had the audacity to look me in the eye and tell me she did not regret cheating on me. What's more disrespectful than that? It took all the self-control I had in me not to do something I ended up regretting. If I was in her shoes as a man and I looked into my wife's eyes and told her I didn't regret cheating on her, what would I be called? A liar, cheater, heartless man, blah, blah, blah. Yet, she did not hesitate to open her fucking mouth and say all those disrespectful words. Florence said she didn't cheat just to spite me and that she had her reasons for cheating. Don't they all? She said she wanted to feel alive and free again. She wanted the excitement and adrenaline of her youth and was not getting it from me, so she cheated. She told me that she felt older than her age many times in our marriage, and she hated the idea that we'd been married for 25 years and have been together for 30 years. Florence proceeded to say that she did not like the idea of being stuck with one man for the rest of her life. She needed to explore her life and do whatever she wanted to do with herself. You know what, guys? I've never really understood why people that cheat think they always have some sort of valid reason to do so. It's the most disrespectful thing ever. If you are tired of your partner and want to live freely, why don't you just let them know? Is it not better to break things off with them or get a divorce rather than lying to their face or cheating on them? Why do people always think it's okay to cheat and lie, then come up with the world's most useless excuses? My wife is one of those stupid people. I asked her why she did not let me know that she was tired of our marriage and wanted to feel young again. I asked her why she felt the need to cheat on me with a stupid young boy that spoke like a fool. I did not hold back that day. I cussed at her and called her names. I made sure she felt the heat of what she did to me. I even asked her if she had been cheating on me before our 25th wedding anniversary, and she said yes. That was when I lost it and started throwing things around. She practically blindsided me and made a fool out of me in front of all the people we loved. Do you know the worst part, Redditors? Florence was the one who was in charge of planning our anniversary. I left all the plans to her and she was the one that executed everything. Can you imagine that she pretended to be so happy and in love with me? We danced around, cut cakes, and even said our vows again. How disgusting can a person be to do that when they were cheating on their partner? Florence said she didn't plan to cheat and that it just happened. She could not resist the temptation because she had longed for the youthful feeling and adrenaline for a long time. I got disgusted and tired of listening to her, so I sent her packing immediately. I practically threw her clothes out of the closet and pushed her out of the room. She tried asking me if she could stay the night, but I refused. I was not that foolish. After everything she said that day, I was sure that I wanted nothing to do with that woman again. That night, after I threw her out, I had to break all our wedding frames and throw them out of the house. I made sure I cleared every single trace of her in that house. I did not want any memories of her lying around my house. I spent hours thinking about what I wanted to do. I knew I did not want to stay married to her, but I did not want to divorce her. If I filed for divorce, I might be the one to part with some of my money. The court doesn't really care who cheated on who. The woman had an upper hand in the court, and that is a fact. I am not a rich man who has houses or cars around the globe, but I am not ready to give a dime to that scheming bitch. I'd rather die than let a single cent of my hard-earned money go to her. My children are coming back home in a few days and I don't know what to do. I want to tell them their mother is a cheat. One is 21 and one is 19, so there will be no need to fight for custody. They are also in college, so there will be no reason to make schedules and decide where they spend the weekends. I don't know how to tell my children what has been going on. I don't even know if I should tell them at all. I'm stuck between not filing for a divorce and filing for a divorce. I'm also stuck with thinking of how to break the news to my children. I'm not the one who cheated, but I'm practically the one facing the consequences of someone else's actions. I need your help once again, my dear Redditors. My wife has left me between a rock and a hard place. There is practically no reasonable solution in my head right now because I am still in shock. I did not expect things to unfold this way after 30 years of knowing Florence. I honestly believed that we would be together for the rest of our lives. There are no words to describe the level of disappointment, shock, and anger I feel right now. I need the advice of my fellow Redditors now more than ever. Please help me get rid of this huge problem. Update. Whew! What a year it has been. I cannot believe that it's been exactly 1 year since I made this post. Time does really fly. I am beyond thankful to Reddit as a platform and the Redditors that make this platform a safe space for anyone and everyone. You all are always ready to help, no matter how complicated the situation is. It's also very comforting that you all share your own stories and experiences in the comments too. For someone like me who began to question why I was going through that predicament in my life, it felt good to see other people telling me I'm not alone. I cannot thank you all enough. I'm also sorry that it took me 1 long year to make an update to this post. It's been a crazy year. A year that changed every single thing I thought was part of my life. So my children eventually got back from college, and like most of you suggested, I told them what had been going on. My children were very shocked to hear everything that happened, considering the fact that they celebrated our anniversary with us. They sympathized with me and made me feel a lot better, to be honest. Florence was still their mother, and I did not guilt-trip them into seeing her as someone else. Our family was broken, but my children made me feel much more alive. They took me out to go see movies, and they even had cooking classes with me. Florence moved in with her lover, and the children visited them once in a while. I was very hurt, and it took me a lot of time to come around, but eventually, I did. I have decided not to file for divorce because I do not want any legal battle at all. I don't want to be the first one to file for a divorce. I want Florence to file for divorce whenever she wants to. Thanks to my children, I started going on casual dates 3 months ago. They told me it was better I dated other people so I would not feel too lonely at home. I listened to them, and it was great. My first few dates did not really go anywhere substantial, but after some more dates, I met someone I was interested in. We've been dating for 1 month now, and it's been great. I plan on asking her to move in with me if we date for up to 1 year. I really like her, and it's cool that we are actually the same age. She has children too, and it's nice to have someone you share common interests with. Well, my dear Redditors, life has been good for the most part. I've been able to move past the ugly experience I had with my wife. She chose to cheat on me because she wanted to feel young, free, and sexy. Well, I hope she got what she wanted. I really don't care about her any longer. It's been a very enlightening year, but I'm most grateful for the EAP friends I made on Reddit. Your funny comments and outrageous ideas are beyond extraordinary. Some of you have the wildest imaginations ever. You all are the best. I'm looking forward to reading your own life experiences, positive, I hope, and just seeing where the journey of life takes us. What a ride it has been. It was not bump-free, but it was worth it.